Earlier today, Mayor Garcia of Santa Fe signed a proclamation for Jewish American Heritage Month, and I was very honored to be invited to speak at the event. After we finished, I mentioned I had to go into the office to record my pre-Shabbat message, and somebody suggested that my speech that I shared at the event should be the pre-Shabbat message, and that's a lovely idea. I start with a rider. I'm not a historian. I've tried my best to be as historically accurate as possible. If there are any errors in my historicity, then I do apologize. This is the presentation that I gave then for the Jewish American Heritage Month proclamation by Mayor Garcia and the city of Santa Fe. During the 16th century, it was illegal for Jews to be in what was called New Spain. If there were Jews, they were likely to be what are now called crypto-Jews, descendants of people who converted because of the Inquisition, but who still held on to a secret Jewish identity. During the 17th and 18th centuries, there may have been a small number of Jews in New Mexico, but the evidence is scant. Competitors in various fields, particularly business, were often accused of being Jewish in order to turn the public against them. Some local families which trace their ancestry locally for hundreds of years will sometimes share interesting Catholic customs such as pan de semita during Lent, which is a form of bread which is cooked only around that time, that's eaten essentially around Passover, that uses vegetable oil and never uses pork lard. Sometimes local families will talk of their Catholic custom of cleaning the house on a Friday before dressing in white and lighting 2 candles and eating braided bread on Friday evening, just as Jews have done for millennia on Shabbat. Jewish immigrants to New Mexico in the 19th century came either individually or as families, and did not present themselves primarily as Jews. Indeed, back then, the term Jew was still often synonymous with criminal, so that kind of public identification would have been dangerous. They came in search of economic opportunity, not as farmers, but as merchants. The first commonly cited evidence we have of an Anglo-Jew, which was someone who was more open in their Judaism than the crypto-Jews, the first evidence we have of them being in New Mexico was Albert Speers, a merchant who came to Santa Fe in 1843, although some historians doubt that he was actually Jewish. Similarly, Eugene Leitenstorfer, described by his contemporaries as a German Jew, probably wasn't Jewish either. But Solomon Jacob Spiegelberg was. With a name like that, how could he not be? Spiegelberg arrived in 1844, his brother Levi in 1848, before Elias, another brother, arrived in New Mexico in 1850. From then on, Jewish families started to move to New Mexico and were able to publicly express their Judaism. Families like the Berthners of Taos, the Zeckendorfs of Albuquerque, and the Seligmans and the Stabs of Santa Fe. Their motivation was to profit off the emerging business there, not to engage in tourism. As one of them, Phoebus Freudenthal from Las Cruces, wrote at the time, "New Mexico is good only to earn money. It is a place, as everyone says, that God made last of all." They arrived at the right time. America was victorious in the War of 1846 to 48 against Mexico, and the Taos Revolt of 1847 also meant that troops, including those at Fort Marcy, needed supplies, and the Jewish merchants were the ones who provided. In 1852, one Jewish merchant was supplying 50,000 pounds of flour to the army in Santa Fe, and within 5 years had received orders totaling over 700,000 pounds of flour. Although they started to become important figures locally, not all of the early Jews were saints. One source describes a Jewish store owner as being too drunk to intervene in a card game in his store where one player accused another of cheating. Interestingly, that alcoholic became the first Jew to be divorced in the state in 1866. What this shows is really important, that Jews were starting to behave more like their non-Jewish neighbors. They were starting to be involved in social situations with them, and they were therefore starting to integrate much more. By 1860, there was somewhere between 32 and 43 Jews in New Mexico, leading to the first observance of Yom Kippur in the state in that year. It's the first time we learn of a public Jewish religious observance. Businesses at that time did not close on Shabbat, but by 1872, the then weekly Santa Fe New Mexican reported that the plaza presented a grim appearance on Saturday, as most of the stores were closed in consequence of the Jewish holiday. The first bar mitzvah ceremony in the state in 1875 was a time when money was gathered to build the first Jewish temple in Santa Fe, although that didn't materialize for another 70 years. And anyone who has sat in any board meeting of Jews knows exactly why it took that long. The Spiegelberg family was among the first to move into what was known as the Indian trade in 1868, and into the 1870s, Jewish merchants took a prominent role in supplying Native American communities with huge amounts of flour, beef, sugar, and coffee. Santa Fe and Las Vegas became two locations with the most Jews. Connections with the outside world grew from beyond business to personal life, including friendships with Archbishop John B. Lamy that lasted for decades. When Lamy laid the foundations of the St. Francis Cathedral in 1869, the Spiegelbergs were among the largest donors to the project, donating $500 to the building. Lehman Spiegelberg was so celebrated locally that when he returned to Santa Fe from a trip to Germany in 1872, a military band greeted his presence. In time, the Jewish community in Albuquerque grew to be the largest in the state, and Jews started spreading out to other towns such as Roswell and Clayton. Although there remain Jewish merchants to this day, it was the development of America's nuclear program in the 1940s that changed the Jewish community locally, as so many of the scientists working at Los Alamos and living in Santa Fe were Jews. The first meeting of what was then called the Santa Fe Jewish Temple, now Temple Beth Shalom, was held on December the 5th, 1946. And weeks later, the officers of the community met to file the Articles of Incorporation for 100 years. On February the 14th, 1949, the first meeting of the new congregation took place, where the minutes of the meeting from 3 years earlier were approved. In modern times, the Jewish community has continued to be instrumental in Santa Fe. Rabbi Marvin Schwab, my predecessor, was instrumental in establishing the Interfaith Leadership Alliance of Santa Fe, and therefore in setting up the Interfaith Community Shelter, at which point the number of recorded homeless deaths from exposure during Santa Fe's winters dropped to 0 for a very long time. After Charlottesville, within 24 hours, we in the Jewish community had arranged a rally against racism in the plaza, which was attended by over 2,000 people. Jews have fought against corruption in education and in public services. We've worked with local and statewide politicians and educators to combat anti-Semitism. A rabbi has been president of the local interfaith community for 13 of its 19 years. And we are once again building that community up to increase connection between all faiths and all peoples in this city of holy faith. Today's Jewish community of Santa Fe, now numbering thousands of Jews, works tirelessly to improve life for every Santa Fean. Santa Fe is an extraordinary place to live, partly because of the contributions of huge numbers of Jews. But times are tough for Jews right now. Times are always tough for Jews, but they're especially tough now. Anti-Semitism is on the rise all around the world, including here in New Mexico. We pay an anti-Semitism tax every time we gather because we have to spend money on security because of the very real threat of violence against us whenever we assemble. And that's why this moment, the moment when Mayor Garcia has issued a proclamation to honor Jewish American Heritage Month, that's why it's so important for all of us in the Jewish community, because it sees us. It sees how essential Jews have been to the state of New Mexico and to the city of Santa Fe for hundreds of years. So Mr. Mayor and everyone in the city who helped to make this happen, on behalf of the Jewish community, we profoundly thank you for this proclamation. It means more to us than you may realize, and thank you. We invite you to join us for our Kabbalat Shabbat service this evening and for our Torah study and our Shabbat Shacharit service tomorrow. May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and for many years we've been looking at ways to address this, and we're going to start with my sermon this evening on the prison of the mind. I believe that mental health is the defining moral issue of our time. And I believe that we have a moral Jewish responsibility to address mental health, to help support people in our community and outside our community as much as possible. And so tonight's sermon starts off that journey of mental health awareness in our community. I really hope you'll be able to join us for that, and for our Torah study tomorrow on perfection, this ideal of perfection in Torah, that you have to be physically perfect in order to offer a sacrifice. And what does that mean, and what are the mental health consequences of it? It's a powerful, moving exploration, and you'll see that the bulletin just came out, and we are busy preparing for our Tikkun Leil Shavuot as well. And the Tikkun Leil Shavuot, the theme this year is healing of body and soul. This is what we say when we have our prayer for healing, a healing of body and soul. What does that mean for us? We're going to really address this over the coming month. I do hope that you'll be able to join us. I hope that you'll be able to hear the sermon and join us for our evening service and for Torah study and Shacharit as well, as much as you are able. And I wish you Shabbat Shalom.